Hello, I'm Richard Ridge for Broadway World. Elton John returns to Broadway with the new musical Tammy, Faye, which begins performances on October 19th at the Palace Theatre. And we drop by the rehearsal room to meet the company, led by Brayben, Christian Borle, and Michael Cerveris. Welcome to Broadway. How does it feel already?
Amazing. I've been so welcomed, and the cast and everyone in the room have been so supportive. It's just been a dream, honestly, really. So collaborative. Yeah. Well, I mean, it was daunting at first because she's such an incredible character. Like, she's not shy and retiring. She's like, she's there. And she's, the most wonderfully in the moment person, which is also what acting is, you just have to be in the moment of things. So it forces you to do that, playing her. Like, it really does. I just thought they were such extraordinary characters, and watching, like, deep diving on all of their videos online and then reading the biographies and stuff, I was like, wow, what a ride. Who wouldn't want to be involved in that story, telling that story?
When this came about for you, what made you say, yes, I want to do this?
It had a lot to do with the creative team. I saw Rupert Gould's production of Ink with my pal Kevin Pariseau on that, and that was also written by James Graham and also choreographed by Lynn. And so I think it was most of the same team, and I was just entranced by it. And then I read the script, and then at the end of the day, you have Elton John songs that blew me away. I don't think it is what people think it might be when you think Tammy, Faye the musical at the Palace Theatre. It has a lot of incredible elements that you would expect, but it goes so much deeper. The story gets so much darker and so much more true. There's not a lot of camp factor to it. It's funny as hell throughout, but it's really got its eye on telling a big, broad, Rupert used the word geopolitical story, and it is all those things, and also a musical.
I think there were several things that made this really exciting for me. One, of course, was getting to sing new Elton John songs, because I grew up with Elton's music. It's meant a lot to me, and actually a lot of my favorite Elton stuff is the early stuff that I grew up with first, and he was kind of the British version of Americana, which is kind of what Luce Cattle and I are doing these days ourselves. So that kind of musically, it felt like a real great marriage. But also getting to work with Rupert Gould is really exciting to me. I've been a fan of his for a long time. Actually more straight plays than musicals of his that I've seen. But so getting the chance to work with him and just get into a room and figure things out, that's been really exciting.
I love this show so much. And I was looking through my Instagram and thinking, of all the shows I've done, this is the one I just wanted to document the process and, like, the technical rehearsals, the rehearsals. I love the actors, and I working with Elton and Jake and James. It's like a sort of, it's amazing. We're a real team, and you come in and initially you go, that's Elton John, like, how are we going to talk to him, let alone, give him notes. But he also, do you know what's really fascinating is it's such a kind of warm, vibrant, inclusive show. But actually, a lot of the work we did was during the lockdowns, actually, on Zooms. And I remember Elton was stuck in Australia, I think, when we had like 3 or 4 new songs we wanted to get. And, I remember being on a Zoom with James and Jake and Elton with these new songs he'd just written in Australia and going, oh, how's this, guys? And texting James and going, this is amazing. But it was funny that I think it was born out of that time when we all wanted to reconnect with each other. And so it's so great, particularly because I'm sure it's true over here as well, but our sector's been so devastated by COVID and the legacy of COVID. It's just great to be in a really vibrant, touchy, joyful musical, given where we started out.
Talk about the musical styles of dance that you're using in this show.
Yes, well, I, as ever, love to be as varied as possible, but the songs that Elton has written has given me capacity to do musical theatre, to do some tap, to do some real modern dance, to do some kind of kooky stuff, which is kind of my wheelhouse. And so it's really across the whole gamut of styles.
She was big in your life because I followed her all on TV. She was someone you sort of knew and followed, right?
Oh my God. I mean, I was a very precocious child. And I was fascinated by her from as a young child. I grew up in a Christian household. I think she always sort of reminded me of my own mom. And, you know, my mom is just one of those people who loves people. She's non-judgmental. She's so kind. You know, she's somebody who really lights up a room. And I always kind of associated my mom has that thing that Tammy has. So in a certain way, this show is also about my mom. You know, so that's a deep connection. But also, I was a twisted little kid too. So like, when the scandal broke, when the media circus was happening, I was very plugged into it. And I found drawings and cartoons of all of it, like as a 9-year-old, you know? So I was always really fascinated by this world and the characters that populated it, you know? So I always felt really connected to it, and just her sensibility. You know, there's a sensibility that is very distinctly hers.
What unlocked this story for me, I think, was how impossibly relevant it feels, even though the majority is set in the 1980s. But it feels like, I think probably writers always say about their shows, but it feels like it's the origins for where we are today, in terms of how the boundaries between church and state got a little confused, the emergence of the Christian right into the political sphere. We make no judgment of that. We just go, isn't this interesting that this happened? I guess also things like, you know, the Bakers were essentially the first ever reality television family, way before the Kardashians ever were, way before Desperate Housewives. Jay Baker basically grew up on television, and that's remarkable. But I guess ultimately, in this, as you will know, this slightly difficult political, cultural moment that we're living through, which is very divisive and very toxic, there's something about what Tammy represented even 3-4 decades ago in terms of love, compassion, tolerance, acceptance, celebrating you in all your complexity and your authenticity and your idiosyncrasies. That feels like such a modern, exciting, beautiful, progressive stance to have way back then that I think we've never needed, frankly, more than we do in the moment we're living through now.
What do you hope audiences take away here on Broadway after seeing your mother's story?
I hope people see both my mother and father as just humans.
Yeah.
You know, as like, I had a sponsor once tell me that I was haphazardly human, and I hope they are able to see, like, these were people who just trying to do the best they can with the best message they could, and got tied up in things and kind of became scapegoats for a lot of the more conservative hellfire brimstone people. And, you know, I just hope they come out feeling like there's a human experience that was there, and they see the humanity there, which I really believe they will.